The Carolina Panthers are the worst team in the NFL. And every day people ask me, JT, how you feel about Bryce Young? Bryce Young is a bust. Listen, I don't believe Bryce Young is a bust. The Carolina Panthers have broken Bryce Young. And, this was a situation I thought was a pretty good one for Bryce Young coming in. Many people were pretty high on Frank Reich and the coaching staff that he had assembled. The offensive line played really good last season during the second half of the season. And although the receiving core was much to be desired, you didn't think it would be this bad, but this is a terrible situation, an awful situation. And Frank Reich, he's not the same head coach that he was with the Indianapolis Colts. Frank Reich is Urban Meyer bad. And that's why Bryce Young is playing some bad football. There are mistakes that Bryce Young is making that I've never, ever seen him make playing for Alabama. And people can make it seem well, that's what happens with these Alabama quarterbacks. They never work out in the NFL. No, if you actually follow college football and you kept up with Bryce Young's career, you would know that he carried Alabama for the last couple of years that he was starting there. Even as Nick Saban, even Nick Saban would tell you, yeah, we were too Bryce Young dependent. That's why Nick Saban got rid of the majority of his coaching staff from the Bryce Young era at Bama, and why he has new OCs and a new offensive staff in place this season. You see, Bryce Young is being compromised by bad coaching and poor roster management. You see, their general manager, they tried to go out there and get receivers at the trade deadline, but apparently they didn't have anything that anybody wanted to give up a Devontae Adams or a Jerry Jeudy, apparently. And the fact that they gave up DJ Moore in that trade to get Bryce Young makes it really bitter when you think about this situation. Because Adam Thielen being your best receiver at 30-something years old, not a knock on Adam Thielen, but that's terrible. Their offensive line is terrible too. What do y'all want Bryce Young to do? People keep saying, man, the Panthers should have took C.J. Stroud, number 1 overall, instead of Bryce. Of course they should have did that. And in hindsight, it's easy to say that. And I'm pretty sure that C.J. Stroud, if he was playing with the Panthers right now, he wouldn't be playing at the level that he is with the Texans. The Texans got a really good coaching staff and a better team around C.J. Stroud. People just say, oh, well, he hasn't had a run game or a good offensive line neither. Yeah, that is true, but he's throwing to some really good young receivers. Tank Dell can get open. He can create easy separation. I was high on Tank Dell. Okay, and they also got John Mechie. They got a lot of talented young receivers on that roster. The Panthers would love to have them a Tank Dell on their roster right now. I mean, Tank Dell is better than anybody else that they have at receiver outside of Adam Thielen. Bryce Young, with how bad of coaching he's received from Frank Reich, and the fact that Frank Reich has just recently retook over play calling duty, shows you that everything you need to know about how bad of a situation he's in. You can't expect somebody to turn lemons to lemonade when they don't even have a stand to even put the lemonade on, to even squeeze the juice out of the lemons to make the lemonade. Bryce Young, yes, he's had some really bad performances. He got outplayed in Thursday Night Football by Tyson Bagent, who was a Division II quarterback around this same time last year. I mean, he had a really bad performance prior to that where he threw multiple interceptions, including a pick six. But when you're in an awful situation, this is the kind of results that you get. You see, I thought that Bryce Young was a generational quarterback. Yeah, he doesn't have a great arm. He's not an incredible athlete, but what separated him was his ability to throw with anticipation, have a high football IQ. But the Carolina Panthers haven't done a great job at designing an offense around Bryce Young's strengths. And I know Panthers fans feel really upset that C.J. Stroud is going off with the Texans when the Texans, their guy was Bryce Young. When the Texans didn't get the number 1 overall pick, they probably were pissed. They were you costed us Bryce Young, Lovie Smith. When in actuality, Lovie Smith actually blessed Houston. Because with Carolina taking Bryce Young, the Houston Texans got blessed with C.J. Stroud, who is a phenomenally of a rookie quarterback. But even if you put C.J. Stroud on Carolina, yeah, he'll be better than Bryce Young. But he wouldn't be better than, too much better than what Bryce Young is right now. He wouldn't be putting up the same numbers that he is with the Texans, with the Panthers, with how bad this situation is. Your offensive tackles don't forgot how to block. Miles Sanders was one of the worst free agency signings of this past year's free agency cycle. Like, this is just a terrible offense. You got absolutely no talent outside of Adam Thielen. You got terrible coaching from Frank Reich. And that's another thing. Like, I was going back and forth with some fool on Twitter who was trying to say, man, they got to give Frank Reich another year. Like, this dude was a decent coach when he was with the Colts. Like, you got to judge people for what they are right now, not for what they used to be or for what you think they could be. That's a problem with a lot of people. Like, we give people more chances than what they should be given because of what we envision them becoming or what we used to view them as. Frank Reich used to be viewed as a solid head coach, but now it's pretty apparent why Indianapolis fired him before the season even concluded. This dude's offensive scheme is just terrible, and he just lost it. This dude is like Joe Biden at head coach. Like, sometimes he forgets to call timeouts. Like, Bryce Young has to remind him to do certain things. Like, this is a losing situation for Bryce Young. This is the equivalent to when Trevor Lawrence received Urban Meyer as his head coach his first season in the league. And although Trevor Lawrence is a generational talent, it doesn't matter how good you are, how great of a quarterback prospect you are, if you got to overcome not just the opposing team, but your own coaching staff. Like, Urban Meyer was so bad that Trevor Lawrence got Doug Peterson in year 2, and the dude looked tremendously better in his second season. You see, a lot of people who are casual fans of the NFL, like, they just judge a player's success just strictly based on the player. But it's more to players being successful at the quarterback position than just them having a good team around them or them just being good or bad. Like, when it comes to the quarterback position, it's really weird because, yes, how successful a quarterback is depends on their situation and how good of a team they have around them, but it also depends on the coaching. And at the same time, when you get drafted number 1 overall, you have to be able to overcome dysfunction. But at the same time, you can't overcome just a completely dysfunctional team. You can't overcome a bad offensive line, receivers that can't get open, and having no run game. Like, what do you want Bryce Young to do? Like, all of a sudden, this dude needs to become Lamar Jackson, and he also needs to throw the ball and catch it to himself also? He has to play pitch and catch? Like, the Carolina Panthers have broken Bryce Young. You know, like, when I watched Bryce Young at Bama, I saw a dude who always looked poised in big moments. A dude where the moment was never too bright for him. And despite his size, you know, like, a lot of people were really high on him. Even Sean Payton. Sean Payton said that he walks on water. Sean Payton even said that he would have took Bryce Young number 1 overall if he had the selection. You can go look up Sean Payton on the herd, like, really early into the season last year. Like, he said, like, yeah, like, Bryce Young's one of those prospects that walks on water. But when you got terrible coaching, it can compromise somebody that looks really promising as a prospect. You see, when you think about quarterbacks that have been bust, like Marcus Mariota and Jameis Winston, what do they all have in common? Instability on the coaching staff, not getting great coaching. Bryce Young is, you know, falling victim to that. And it's a shame that people are trying to make it seem like he's a bust and not really giving him the benefit of a doubt that he deserves. Like, yes, we know the dude is small, but you just can't dominate the way that you did at Alabama playing football in the toughest conference in the NFL just because, you know, like, you were small and it was the college game. Like, you got to have some intangibles and some good traits about you to be able to overcome that and be considered somebody who carried Alabama. Like, I get freaking tired of people telling me, oh, he played at Bama. Like, they always got great talent. No, the fuck they didn't. If you watched Alabama, Bryce Young's final season, you would know that those Alabama teams weren't as stacked as what they were in previous years. I get tired of people that do all this damn helmet scouting. Like, shut up. Go watch the film. Go watch the tape. Like, Bryce Young was a really promising prospect coming out, and you can be a really promising prospect that ends up having a pretty awful career because you get compromised getting drafted into a really terrible situation with the terrible head coach. Like, Frank Reich has to go. There's no way you can bring this clown back for another season. No way. Like, this dude's like a female. He doesn't know how to make up his damn mind. He gave the play calling up a couple of weeks ago, and now he's taking that shit back over. Like, if the dude who you gave the play calling duties to wasn't good and you weren't good, then who else is? That's just a sign that you hired a terrible staff. The only good person on The staff that Frank Reich hired was their defensive coordinator, Jairo Evero. Like, at least the defense looked solid. Maybe he should take over the reins as the interim head coach for the remainder of the season if they go ahead and just part ways with Frank Reich. Because with how bad this team has been, Frank Reich doesn't deserve to coach the rest of this season. Like, this dude is Urban Meyer bad. And, I was a big believer in Bryce Young. I still am, but until Frank Reich gets the boot and whoever their general manager is gets the boot, like, Bryce Young is going to continue to struggle. Now, I'm not saying that Bryce Young doesn't deserve any of the blame. Like, he definitely has made a lot of bad mistakes, a lot of bad decisions. He kind of holds on to the ball too long, and we aren't really seeing the same playmaking ability that we saw at Alabama at this level. But there's only so much you can do when you don't have receivers that can get open consistently. Outside of 30-something-year-old Adam Thielen, you don't have no run game. You don't have no offensive line. What do you want the dude to do? Honestly, like, you tell me. For all the people in the comment section that are calling Bryce Young a bust, how can Bryce Young be comfortable, be serviceable in a situation where receivers can't get open consistently, the offensive line allows him to get pressured as soon as he gets the snap, he has terrible play calling, terrible coaching? Like, yes, we understand that when you get drafted first overall and you get drafted this high, you got to be able to overcome terrible situations, but this is a situation where everything is just completely wrong. There's nothing for Bryce Young to go back and look at when he looks at this season and say, yeah, like, has some opportunity to succeed. I mean, the only highlight of his rookie season has been being able to lead the Panthers to a win over C.J. Stroud. That's about it. I mean, at least he was able to outdo C.J. Stroud. Can we give him credit for that? Can we? Because, I mean, you look at C.J. Stroud, you just can't say, oh, well, C.J. Stroud is playing way better than Bryce Young, when they're in two different situations. You see, before the season, many people didn't expect Houston to be a good team. I expected them to be a 7-win team, possibly 8-win team. But now with Houston actually being a comfortable team or a comfortable team and actually being in the playoff mix, people are going to say, well, the Panthers got it wrong. They should have taken C.J. Stroud. Obviously, C.J. Stroud is the better quarterback. Even if he was playing for the Panthers right now, of how bad they've been, he would be better than Bryce Young. I'm not disagreeing with that. But what I am saying is that he wouldn't be putting up the same numbers that he is with the Texans if he was starting for the Panthers. That's just the reality of the situation. And when you look at C.J. Stroud, he got drafted to a team that has nailed all their draft picks. This is a team that traded away Deshaun Watson, and now you look back on that trade, they fleeced him. So whoever is in charge of assembling the roster for the Houston Texans, they've done a great job at killing it in the draft and building a good team around C.J. Stroud that's going to allow him to have success, even with them having limitations, not having a good run game and not having a good offensive line. At least he has receivers that can get open. I mean, like, bruh, Bryce Young doesn't have anything but old man Adam Thielen. That's it. You can't run the football. Receivers can't create separation. Nobody can block for the brother. And I mean, what do you want them to do? Honestly, like, the Panthers have broken Bryce Young. That's the truth about the situation. You can call him a bust, anything you want to, but it's not all on him. The majority of this is due to poor drafting. Like, let me ask y'all something. If you're a Panthers fan, what are your most successful draft selections in the last couple of years on offense? Because you've done pretty well on defense. Derek Brown, J.C. Horn is still pretty solid when he's healthy. Jeremy Chin. But what are the last couple of draft picks on offense that have worked out successfully for Carolina? Akem Ekwonu, he's having a really disappointing sophomore campaign. Okay, Chuba Hubbard is like, he's decent, but he's nothing great. Terrence Marshall, he can barely even get the ball. Your best draft picks in the last couple of years has probably been like DJ Moore. And that's about it. And you traded him away for Bryce Young. And I know that's bitter. It's bittersweet that to get Bryce Young, you had to give up DJ Moore. But that's just the price that it costs to get the number one pick and get a franchise quarterback. Like, to have a franchise quarterback, you still have to give them a serviceable situation. Bryce Young can't even get that. I mean, at least give him some receivers. You give Bryce Young some receivers, he looks way different. Outside of Adam Thielen, there's no good receivers. And you can argue that CJ Stroud would be better, but the Panthers still would be a shit team because they just got bad coaching and a bad team around Bryce Young. You can only overcome so many hindrances. Like, I don't think Bryce Young is a bust. I just think that he got drafted to a situation that we perceived to be a great situation where the Carolina Panthers were just fool's gold. And my guy, the Big Cat, Keep Pounding Podcast, make sure you go check him out. Shout out to him. He told me, honestly, before the season started in the offseason that the Panthers weren't going to be that good, and it shocked me. And he said, yeah, JT, like, Bryce Young doesn't have a good situation. Like, he was questionable about the receivers, didn't really like the offensive line, didn't really trust the coaching staff, and didn't really trust the running backs neither. So props all to my guy, the Big Cat. But even then, I don't even think he expected for the offense to be as bad as what it's been. Hell, I was talking to a former NFL scout. He told me that CJ Stroud was going to have a better rookie season. And, you know, even he said that the Carolina Panthers were a shitty situation, but even he didn't expect for this team to be as bad as what they are right now, for Bryce Young to be this compromised. Like, Bryce Young is in an awful situation. The Panthers have broken this young man. And until they get in a new head coach that can instill life into this offense and a GM that's competent enough to build a solid team around Bryce Young for him to have success, like, he's going to continue to look like a bust until otherwise. This is just what happens when you don't have a good situation. Yes, you got to be able to overcome not having it all. That's what comes with being a number 1 overall pick. But at the same time, like, when you just have nothing to work with but an old man Adam Thielen, there's only so much you can do.